Welcome back to For the Sake of the Argument. Thanks for joining me today. We had Attorney General Dana Nessel on, and she told us some really scary things about the Saline data center that they're trying to cram through. She brought in with her the contract from DTE and whomever else, because most of it's redacted. Even the signatories, their names are redacted. And not even the governor saw those redacted portions, or the attorney general. This is scary shit. You love Michigan. You love our water. You love our air. You love, well, we've got pretty high electric bills right now, but if you want higher electric bills, then do nothing. These are things you've got to fight against. Reach out to your Michigan Public Service Commission. Go on their website for the MPSC and state your fears and push back against them doing this without public hearing in Saline, because they're going to do it everywhere. There's going to be a big protest tomorrow on Tuesday, December the 16th in Lansing on the steps of the Capitol. I think it's in the afternoon, but you'll have to find that out. Go, speak up, stand up for what you believe in. It's going to take every Michigander, no matter what your stripe, to stand up against the utility companies who are always using us as a backstop. Thanks for listening, and check me out For the Sake of the Argument on every social media platform. Dana Nessel, our Attorney General, thanks for coming on today For the Sake of the Argument. This is a very hot topic. I'm glad you're here. Let me ask you, let's get right into it. In case the audience isn't familiar, can you give a brief overview of the Saline AI data center situation up to this point?
Yeah, so we were first made aware of this project at my department on October 31st when DTE filed an application with the Michigan Public Service Commission for this project, this being the biggest project we've ever had in Michigan, one of the biggest projects, if not the biggest projects in all of the United States when it comes to the size of this data center, 1.4 gigawatts. That is approximately enough power generated for a city of 1 million people. So it is very, very significant. They filed the application, something that we call ex parte. And what does that mean? It means basically just between DTE and the Public Service Commission in a manner where our department, the Department of Attorney General, does not have the ability to intervene in the case. So just to explain so that everybody understands this process, and I know it's complicated, but we have monopolies in Michigan that are our utilities for gas and electric. We don't have a choice who our electricity provider is, who our gas provider is. Just where you live dictates who provides your service. So they are monopolies. They are regulated by the Michigan Public Service Commission. That is a 3-person panel. All 3 of those members are appointed by the governor in staggered terms. Right now, all 3 of those individuals have been appointed by Governor Whitmer. They are the ones that make the decision as to fact, as to law, when it comes to requests to raise our utility rates. So normally how my office serves is we have a statutory right to intervene in these cases and to basically contest the efforts by the utilities to raise our rates. So we get to put on witnesses, cross-examine their witnesses, get expert witnesses to weigh in, and to make arguments to the Public Service Commission if we think what the utilities are asking for is beyond what should be expected or what should be permissible under the facts and the law. So in this case, DTE is asking for, the biggest energy project anywhere in the history of the state, perhaps in the United States.
Wow.
But they want it in an ex parte fashion where we can't participate and where we just have to go along with whatever it is, irrespective of how it impacts ratepayers. Now, DTE is saying, oh, well, don't worry, this is not going to raise anybody's rates, even though, of course, historically, DTE has not been a good faith actor in this space. DTE consistently has some of the highest rates, but the worst service of any utility in America.
Yes.
And they routinely lie to us in these applications where they will say, oh, we need a rate increase and here's why. And then once we do a little bit of digging and kind of find out as much information as we can, we find out, wait, you're just trying to charge ratepayers with your, corporate charter jet travel, which is impermissible. Or you're saying you need it to do something and you got money last year for the same thing and you just never did it. And instead, you gave pay increases to, your CEO or your CFO, or that the shareholders just did really well. And remember, the way it works is that these companies get an automatic rate of equity, a rate of return of around 10%. And I don't know any companies where just automatically, no matter how bad their policies or practices are, they get a 10% rate of return, which is kind of insane when you're talking about the product being one that people can't live without. You can't live without gas or electricity. So here we are trying to intervene in this case. We've been provided with the contract, and if I may, Lori, the contract that we've been provided at our department looks like this, where some of the most important information that would be in the contract has been redacted out, so we can't even read about it.
Wait, who redacted it?
DTE.
How can they present a contract for your review without every dot, every comma, every letter in there?
Well, because they're saying that it's proprietary information and it's commercially sensitive, so we can't have access to it, even though in most ratepayer cases, how it occurs is that our office signs an NDA and we say we're not going to release anything that's commercially sensitive, but at least that way we get to read the entire contract and we get to challenge the things that we think are inappropriate for them to have in that contract, or to say you need to add things to the contract. But in this case, you have all kinds of incredibly important things about the contract, including my favorite is we don't even get to know who signed the contract. So even the signatories to the contract have been totally redacted, as have many other things like exit fees, termination fees. What happens if the AI firms that are involved, the tech billionaires who own Oracle and OpenAI, like what if they go out of business? That's heavily redacted. Credits for the customer are completely redacted. Terms of service, redacted. So anything that you would want to know about this contract, you can't read even if you tried. And so it's deeply disturbing. This is going to be decided on, most likely, on December 18th. Initially, we were told, this has to be done by December 5th, or they're just going to walk. These companies are going to walk.
Which wasn't true.
Which turned out to be a lie. And now they're saying, oh, no, now it's got to be by the 19th or they're going to walk. And what I would say to you about this, Lori, is that when I am giving presentations to consumers or to seniors about how to best avoid being scammed, what I tell people all the time is, if somebody is creating this false sense of urgency, like you better do this right now, or if you don't, you have to buy this house, you got to buy this car, and you got to do it sight unseen, and you got to do it without even an inspection. And if not, I got 3 or 4 other people lined up ready to purchase this house or car. I would say, oh my God, don't purchase that house or car. You're being scammed. Well, that's what this is. It is obviously a scam because we have the AI, firms saying, well, you better approve this contract and it better be approved right away. And if not, we're taking our business to Ohio or we're going someplace else. And so that's what makes me so concerned. We've asked for a contested hearing, as we normally have, and we even said it doesn't have to be like a full 120-day hearing, which is the maximum amount of time a hearing can take. We could do this in 60 days.
Would that be in front of the Michigan Public Service Commission?
Correct.
The 3 people.
Yes.
Can I ask a question?
But publicly,
okay.
Where the public has an opportunity to watch. That's right.
Did the Michigan Public Service Commission get to see the unredacted portion of this?
They get to see that, yes.
Those 3 people do.
Right.
But you, The Attorney General of the state of Michigan do not.
That's right. And again, I am the top consumer advocate in the state by law. And even I don't get to see it. How can I protect the public? How can I protect ratepayers if I can't even see this? I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's all right. Well, I want to go back to one thing you said, that this would be the equivalent, the energy used would be the equivalent of a city with 1 million residents. I know Detroit doesn't have quite 1 million, but it's Detroit plus a few more.
That's right.
That's how big the footprint is on the drain on our resources regarding energy. But there are other resources that are being drained. I would like to know what you think from where you're sitting, what the biggest risks of these mega data centers are.
Oh my gosh, where to start with that? I will say the one that I'm most concerned about is that these AI firms are going to go belly up. We know already they are heavily leveraged. They're billions and billions of dollars in debt. We just saw a story about Oracle losing a tremendous amount in the stock market because people are so concerned that maybe they'll even be relegated to junk bond status. That's how leveraged they are. So what happens when they come to town and, we build this enormous data center, but in addition, of course, we have to have, an extra, power station, and there has to be transmission lines that are put in. According to DTE, their estimates are at least $500 million has to be spent just to put the structures together, the infrastructure that's needed just to start operating the data center, not to keep it operating, but just to start. And if they go belly up and they're not using this data center anymore, either because they've just gone out of business because they couldn't afford to stay in business, or maybe the technology has changed and they don't need it anymore, then who's going to pay for that $500 million? And I think that's a low estimate. It could be much higher than that. If they're not around to pay it and they don't have the money to pay it, it's going to get passed along to the ratepayer. And what I don't understand is if DTE thinks this is such a good deal and they're so sold on the fact that that's not going to happen, hey, DTE, why don't you put in the contract that if for any reason these AI firms are unable to pay that amount of money, that you, DTE, will just take a loss, like normal businesses do. You don't get a 10% rate of return. Instead, maybe you guys have to lay some people off. Maybe you take a loss. Maybe your shareholders
They don't want
do
the
that
risk because they think they can lay the risk off on us, the consumer, because they have been for years now.
Yes, exactly.
So if this project in Saline, the Michiganders could foot the bill for because there's no contingency if something goes wrong. Tell us about what the increased energy costs are and also our resources. What kind of water and pollution are we going to be experiencing?
Well, the problem is so much of that is unknown. And, you have here the AI firms and DTE saying that they're going to have this closed loop, and so they're not going to use as much water as some data centers have. They've made that claim. In terms of the amount of energy that's required and where that comes from, they're saying, oh, yes, this is going to be green energy. But what's so crazy about that is while they're saying that publicly, that's not what they're saying to their shareholders. I mean, they've talked about the fact that this is most likely to be powered using gas generation. So that's not going to be clean energy. And that's likely going to be bad for our environment. It's unknown whether they're going to have to keep coal plants that are slated for decommissioning if those are going to end up having to stay open. And we know there is a very distinct human cost to having coal and gas in terms of what that does to the environment and what that does to humans, in terms of respiratory issues and all kinds of other problems. So it's deeply concerning. The other thing is I'm very skeptical in terms of the numbers of jobs that this particular center is alleged to be generating. First of all, if you look across the United States, in the states that have many of these data centers, what you see is that typically they don't provide many jobs. All the jobs are just in construction building it, but then practically nobody works there. And people who do work at the center, generally it's remote. So they're not even going to be living in Michigan.
I read that in this particular place in Saline that they have planned for like 10 parking spots.
When you look at the parking, when you look at the number of bathrooms for this particular plan, it's highly doubtful there's going to be many jobs. And what is kind of crazy is that the way that this has been structured by the Michigan Strategic Fund, which is the state agency that you would go to apply for this massive tax break, you only have to provide 30 jobs in order to get what will end up being hundreds of millions of dollars in tax breaks, which is kind of a crazy low number to me, but it is pretty much commensurate with what we see with these data centers in other places, that they don't provide more than 30 jobs.
So the appeal to some people, perhaps even the unions, is on the front end because this will provide a lot of union construction jobs initially.
Typically, yes, for the, say, year or so that it takes to build the center, but then likely never again. And the people who work there, maybe they're janitors who service the place. Maybe they are people who mow the lawn outside. But you typically don't really have people who work in these data centers after it's built.
Can I ask you, because you have been our Attorney General now in your second term, and I think you're pretty beloved on both sides, Democrats and Republicans, because you've stood up for things, whether it was through a Democrat or Republican lens. So this is something that it seems that all people are waking up to and standing up against because it doesn't serve us. And isn't Michigan, don't we have a huge tourism economy because of our beautiful Great Lakes and our beautiful skiing and beaches and things like that? Do you think that people are going to be able to stop this as they learn more and more and more? Or do you think the powers that be will shove something down our throat again?
Well, what's deeply concerning to me is that, firstly, the utilities have pretty much bought and paid for our elected officials for a long time now. Two of the biggest donors to elected officials are DTE and Consumers Energy. So much so that I remember having a state rep say to me a few years ago, I talked about these bills that I was supporting and that we helped draft that would have held the utilities more accountable. And he said to me, oh, no, anything with the utilities, that's a no-go automatically. And I was like, no matter how bad the situation is, no matter how much it helps your constituents, no matter how badly we need this, he said, no, because I'll be out of office, so I just can't touch it. So we know that to be the case. But I think one of the things that I'm most concerned about, aside from the environmental issues, is that we'll have an economic collapse here that is cataclysmic for the state because businesses simply won't be able to operate because their utility costs will be so high. And for residential households, that people just can't live in Michigan because they're not going to be able to afford their rates of service for their gas, for their electric, and that, if our rates are already so high, for them to double, triple, quadruple even, I mean, that is a real thing that could happen if things go wrong here. And that's why, to me, look, I'm not a policymaker. I was not in the legislature in 2024 when they passed these tax incentives to try to encourage the data centers to come here. And of course, I wasn't the governor who signed off on that. I'm just the Attorney General, again, whose job it is to protect consumers, whose job it is to protect ratepayers. But what I would say is this: we have an opportunity to learn what went wrong from all the other states that weren't, aware of all these risks. And so they weren't proactive. And, things turned out really poorly. We can do better here. We can learn from what went wrong in those other states, and we can make sure that we do this right. But, to have DTE and the AI firms say that they're only going to do this if they can do it in this very secretive manner, and to have so few members of our legislature and of Congress step forward and say, at least give us a contested hearing. I've talked to some legislators who say, well, I feel uncomfortable making any comments on this because I voted yes on that data center bill. But I say to them, these things, don't contradict each other, right? You could have voted yes to incentivize data centers to come here, but still make sure that we're doing it the right way.
They can't stop negotiating. They can't say yes to a general idea and not care about the details. I sell real estate. I have to worry about everything until the house closes, every tiny detail. So these tech companies aren't just targeting Saline for AI data centers. They're looking at many different spots. Do you know, I don't, how many we have right now that are already operating? I know they're on a smaller scale.
Right. I mean, I do know that we have many operating. I don't know the exact number, but again, they're so much smaller than this. It just pales in comparison.
Right.
And so that's why we're so concerned, because of the, enormity of this particular project, and understanding if this goes south, if this goes bad, again, we could have our own, Michigan-specific recession just because of this particular project. And here's the other thing we know. DTE is out there saying they have another 3 gigawatts for new data centers in addition to this, that they've been in negotiations with AI companies for. So this is just the beginning. But if we handle this in a way that we're not safeguarding residents of our state, and we're saying, okay, it's okay to do just ex parte hearings, then we've set the precedent that that's what we do from now on. And we're very concerned that any future projects after this, they'll say, this is how we're always going to do it. And then what's the point of having the Attorney General in a position where we have this statutory authority to intervene in these cases if you're going to say we're not going to have contested cases anymore? From now on, it's just between the AI billionaires, DTE and consumers, and these 3 people who are, again, they're not accountable to the voters. They're in appointed positions.
It doesn't benefit anyone. So what can we do? There must be something that we can do. I've read and heard people are out there protesting and going to meetings, but is there something coming up then that we're going to have a last say at?
Yeah, there's a rally that's going to be tomorrow at the Capitol on let's see, what is tomorrow?
Today's the 15th.
All right.
So Tuesday the 16th?
It'll be on the 16th, right? And that's something that people can go to make their voices heard. But what I really recommend, as much as anything, is to be, using the public comment area of the Michigan Public Service Commission. There, you can go right to their site and make comment. Over 5,000 people already have. But also to be making your voices heard with your state legislators, with the governor, and with your congressional representatives and United States senators. It takes a village, right?
Right.
We should all be getting out there and saying, I supported you, Senator so-and-so, Representative so-and-so, and I expect for you to come out and to say there has to be a contested hearing in this Saline data center case. It's that important. And if you're not doing it, tell me why. What would be the reason to have all this secrecy? If this project is really this great for the state of Michigan, it's still going to be great in a couple months after we have an abbreviated contested hearing. I just don't understand what the purpose would be in doing things this way. It's really the worst possible practice or procedure, and it sets a terrible precedent.
I know Governor Whitmer approves of this project, and because of the jobs I believe that it's going to bring in the construction industry and whatever else. But did she get a copy that was unredacted?
No.
Jesus, even the governor. But how can you be for something or against something when you don't know every piece of it?
Well, what I would say is this, just to, to your listeners, to your viewers, who signs a contract that you can't read? Right? I mean, that's just very, bad practice by the government.
Unheard of.
Yeah, and I just, again, what is the point in having, the AG have this authority to assist customers and to make sure that, they're not being handed, a set of circumstances that could be incredibly detrimental, again, for our individual customers, but really for our state residents as a whole. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. Why not just say, hey, AI tech billionaires and monopoly utilities
On their way to being trillionaires.
do whatever you want, and the government's not going to interfere. In fact, what these AI companies said to me when I tried to have a conversation with them about it is they said that they came here because they thought it would be a politically welcoming environment. And I said, what does that mean? And does that mean that you were told that all of the elected officials in our state would just roll over for you? And I suspect that maybe that is, but nobody consulted with me. And so I'm going to continue to do my job, which is to stand up for ratepayers in this state. And I hope that everybody will, understand. I understand that the news cycle is fast and furious, and
Yes.
every day it's something new.
Overwhelming.
But this is going to be around as an issue for us for many, many decades to come. This will be around for our children and our grandchildren. If we don't handle it right, this could be cataclysmic for our state. So we have to do the right thing. And in this set of circumstances, it's so easy. Just have a contested hearing. That's all we're asking for. And we can that way see exactly what's in this contract, and we can fix the things that may be broken.
So just to recap, if everyone that's listening that cares about Michigan, cares about fairness, cares that that contract is so redacted, even the signatories of the contract were withheld from scrutiny by anyone, including our governor or our attorney general. If you care, go on to the MPSC website and put your public comments, put what you're afraid of. And if you don't care for yourself, I hope you care for your children and your grandchildren after them. Attorney General Dana Nessel, thank you again for always standing up for all of us.
Well, thanks for having me on, and hoping for the best in this set of circumstances. But as I said before, I think contacting your representatives matters a lot, because it's not just all of us and our voices, but the people that we elected to look out for us. Let's demand that they do so.
Sounds like a plan. Thank you again.
Thanks for having me.